As we were having tea with Mirabelle before Sam left, he said to me, "What's with that attitude?" I tried to brush it off, but Mirabelle, who had grown accustomed to Sam's behavior, was clearly upset on my behalf. She offered to help clean Sam's room, which was in disarray. While tidying up, Mirabelle and I chatted and laughed. During this, she reached for something and accidentally opened a drawer. I tried to stop her, but before I could, I heard her surprised voice, "What's this?" Curious, I looked over and was stunned to see what was in Mirabelle's hand: a photo of a happy family and a completed divorce application. It was at that moment that I fully realized the situation. "Mirabelle, will you help me?" I asked, feeling a surge of determination. "Of course," she responded, becoming a strong ally in my fight. I rolled up my sleeves, ready to tackle the challenge ahead. "My name is Sally Smith. I'm a 35-year-old housewife who has been married to Sam for 5 years. Despite not having children, we had enjoyed a peaceful, gentle marriage. Our meeting had been through an acquaintance, a so-called arranged marriage. Both of us were coming out of previous relationships and were tired of fiery romances. Sam and I shared similar values, though there were no butterflies like in my past relationships. Still, at the right age for marriage, I believed it was fate and agreed to marry him. Sam had similar reasons for marrying me, so we never questioned it. Our division of household chores and routines went smoothly, and while many around us boasted about their love marriages, I genuinely felt content with my own. However, our peaceful life took a drastic turn one night when Sam, who rarely drank, came home drunk at 3 a.m. I greeted him with, "Welcome back, you're late." Instead of the usual exchange, Sam's behavior was unsettling. "Shut up, it's my business when I come back," he snapped, reeking of alcohol. "I married you to handle the housework. Don't get involved, you're just a housekeeper." I was stunned to hear Sam's true feelings for the first time. Although we hadn't experienced the typical courtship, I had loved Sam and believed he loved me too. "I wish I had married someone younger and could brag about her," he said. Sam then stormed off to his study and passed out on a makeshift bed. I cried at the entrance, feeling as if our marriage had been a lie. It was clear that things would be more difficult from then on. Yet, when Sam woke up the next morning, he was his usual self. "Good morning. What time did I get back yesterday? Man, I was forced to drink a lot. Huh, something wrong?" Confused, I could only respond with a bewildered good morning, as Sam acted as if nothing had happened. I was at a loss for how to respond. Seeing my worry, Sam pressed further. "What's up? You're acting strange today." "It's nothing," I said, trying to brush it off. "Come on, it can't be nothing. We're married, we should be able to talk about anything." If he insisted, I couldn't hold back any longer. I told him about what happened the previous night. As I spoke, Sam's expression gradually faded. When I finished, his demeanor changed completely. "So it came out, huh? That's awful. You probably married me for my status anyway," he said dismissively. "I married you because we shared the same values," I replied, hurt. "Yeah, whatever," Sam cut me off, sinking heavily into a chair. He then began issuing orders with a nod of his chin. "Dinner. Make it quick. Who do you think provides for you? Get to work." From that moment on, Sam treated me solely as a housekeeper. "Hey, dinner." He stopped calling me by my name, and though I was initially upset, I eventually grew numb to it. "Is the bathroom ready?" he would ask. "It's clean now," I'd respond. "Well, say so sooner. You're slow." I started using formal language with him, and he seemed to accept it as the norm. After living this way for several months, Sam announced at dinner one evening, "I'll be on a business trip for a month starting tomorrow. Get ready." "A business trip?" I asked, puzzled. "Got a problem with that?" he snapped. "No, I understand," I'd replied. Sam worked as an officer, and I wondered if he really had business trips, but I didn't have the courage to ask. Sam, grumbling about dinner, went to bed at his usual time while preparing for his trip. Alone, I reflected on how things had come to this and shed tears. "Don't slack off on the housework," he said tersely. "I'll be going then." As he left, I saw him off and felt a wave of relief once I was alone. A month without Sam seemed like a respite from the constant stress. Though the idea of continuing this life long-term was disheartening, I decided to make the most of the month ahead. I lifted my spirits and treated myself. I used my own savings to eat out with friends for the first time in ages, read books leisurely, and enjoyed my solitude. During this time, I thought deeply about my future and resolved to take steps toward a divorce. The first step was to find a job, though I knew Sam wouldn't approve of me working. After much consideration, I decided to try part-time data entry work from home, drawing on my experience as an administrative assistant before marriage. I had no trouble using the computer and gradually took on more assignments, which increased my income. Just as I was becoming accustomed to this new lifestyle, Sam returned home after a month away. "Did you take care of the house properly?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "We'll see about that," Sam said, eyeing me with annoyance. It had been a while since I'd seen him, and there was no souvenir. I didn't even feel like complaining about it. "Well, it's passable, I guess," Sam remarked after surveying the house. My spirits sank again. As long as Sam was around, I felt like an emotionless robot, and I reaffirmed to myself that I needed a divorce. After that, Sam frequently went on long business trips. Each time, I had to pack and unpack his things. The only small relief was that the hotel where Sam stayed apparently did his laundry, so there was hardly any for me to do when he came home. I couldn't count the number of times I was overwhelmed by the sticky sweet scent of fabric softener, but complaining about it would only make Sam angry, so I always wore a mask while handling the laundry. One day, my sister-in-law Mirabel came to visit. Unlike me, Mirabel was lively, and since we were about the same age, we had gotten along well since the beginning of my marriage, calling each other by our first names. I served her some cake and tea I had made and joined her. Mirabel took a bite of the cake, smiled, and said, "Sally's cake is always so delicious. Sam's such a lucky guy." "You think so?" I replied, trying to mask my discomfort. "What's wrong?" "Something happened?" Mirabel asked, noticing my forced smile. "It's nothing," I said, attempting to change the subject as I offered her another piece of cake. "How about you, Mirabel?" "Oh, listen to this," she began. He left his socks lying around again. "Isn't that cute?" "Not cute at all," I said, laughing lightly. Mirabel was talking about her husband, whom she had recently married. Apparently, he had been a familiar face in the neighborhood and, despite being 10 years younger, had pursued Mirabel for 10 years before they'd finally married. Initially, Mirabel had treated her husband like a child, but after such persistent courtship, she was completely charmed, and despite some complaints, they lived happily together. I couldn't help but feel envious of their relationship. "Hey, are you ready yet?" Sam's voice called from the other room. "I am," I replied. "You're really slow," he said. "I'm sorry," I responded, feeling a pang of frustration. Sam seemed oblivious to Mirabel's presence, likely because we rarely spoke, and I hadn't mentioned her visit. Mirabel, however, was taken aback by Sam's attitude. Without even coming into the living room, Sam headed straight to the entrance and said, "Make sure everything's cleaned up before leaving." "What's with that attitude?" Mirabel asked, her anger evident. "It's okay," I said, trying to brush it off, but Mirabel was incensed on my behalf. Having grown accustomed to Sam's behavior, she offered to help clean his room, which was a mess. While tidying up, Mirabel and I chatted and laughed. In the middle of our conversation, Mirabel reached for something in the drawer. I tried to stop her, but before I could, she exclaimed, "What's this?" Her voice was filled with surprise. I rushed over and saw what she had found. A photo of a happy family and a completed divorce form. I was stunned into silence. This discovery made me realize the full extent of Sam's deceit. "Mirabel, will you help me?" I asked. "Of course," she replied, becoming a strong ally. I started preparing for the fight ahead, rolling up my sleeves. Mirabel and I packed up Sam's belongings into trash bags, setting aside anything that might serve as evidence: diaries, photos, and letters. The photos, showing Sam's gentle smile from our early marriage days, were collected with a heavy heart, while Mirabel reacted with growing outrage to each one. "Let's go to the lawyer's office now," Mirabel suggested with a mischievous grin. Yes, let's do that, I agreed, smirking back. Sam had said to make sure everything was cleaned up, so I decided to clean up this relationship entirely. I quickly packed my immediate belongings, disposed of all of Sam's stuff, and headed to the city hall in Mirabel's car. After filing for divorce, we went straight to Mirabel's house. Her husband was initially shocked by our intrusion, but after hearing the full story from Mirabel, his anger matched hers. For someone who has loved a person for over 10 years, what Sam did is unforgivable, he said. Sally, you can stay here as long as you need, Mirabel offered. I appreciate it. Thank you, I said, feeling grateful. Mirabel apologized, though she had done nothing wrong. On the contrary, she had found the evidence and provided me with shelter. I was deeply grateful to Mirabel. Sam had said he'd be on a business trip for a week and wouldn't contact me during that time, so he wouldn't discover I had left the house until he returned. We'll never forgive him. He's going to regret this, Mirabel declared with conviction. That's the spirit, I replied, feeling energized. Both my husband and I will help you, Mirabel added. Thank you so much, I said, feeling a surge of motivation. Thanks to Mirabel's support, I was full of energy. That night, I slept soundly, and the next day began working with a lawyer. At the same time, I was searching for a new place to live. One of Mirabel's acquaintances offered me a room at a very affordable rate. I gratefully accepted and decided to make that room my new base. Let's work hard together, I said. Yes, thank you very much, I responded. The lawyer's name was Turner, and he was refreshingly professional. Initially, I was apprehensive, fearing he might be another disappointment, but appearances can be deceiving. Turner handled everything efficiently, from fact-checking to forecasting, and made every request possible. I discussed my case with Turner, who then sent a certified letter to Sam. I left Sam's copy on the living room table. 3 days later, Sam called me, his voice filled with anger. Hey, what the hell is this? He demanded as soon as I answered the phone. It's exactly what it says, I replied calmly. This is ridiculous, Sam ranted, his frustration evident. Hey, whose money did you use for this? Mine. What? I asked, taken aback. It's my money, right? Sam insisted. No, it's mine, I corrected him. While Sam had previously covered living expenses, my income had become sufficient to cover my own needs. Therefore, the lawyer's fees were paid entirely with my own money, including my savings. Despite my explanation, Sam refused to believe it. Seriously, you're just a useless woman. Just do the housework quietly and I'll provide for you. Hurry up and come back, Sam demanded. The insult was infuriating. I felt rage welling up inside me and unleashed it on Sam. It's you who can't live without me. I have my own income and I don't need you in my life. Just as Sam was about to retaliate, the doorbell rang, interrupting the call. I couldn't help but smile when I heard the doorbell. Look, someone's here. Who could it be at this hour? Mom, Dad? I almost laughed at the predictability of the situation but kept my composure and spoke into the phone. Perfect timing, Sally. Thanks for letting us know. We'll have a serious talk with our foolish son, my father-in-law said firmly. I appreciate it very much, I replied and hung up. My in-laws, both former teachers, were known for their strict discipline. Sam had often mentioned being intimidated by them, but to me they were exemplary in-laws. There was no way they would condone Sam's infidelity. A few hours later, Mirabel received a message from her father-in-law saying they had given Sam a thorough scolding and wanted to arrange a meeting to discuss things. We'll be there with you, Mirabel assured me. Really, thank you, I responded. I then contacted my own parents to set a date for the meeting. When they heard about everything, they were deeply upset, which made me feel somewhat guilty. Mom, I'm sorry for all this, I said. What are you saying? Your happiness is the most important thing. Let's end this bad relationship quickly, she replied. For now, let's cut these bad ties, I said. I might join you, my mother added, causing my father to panic on the phone. I chuckled, playing along with my mother's mischievousness. My parents had an arranged marriage, but they got along so well that everyone envied them. My positive view of arranged marriages came from watching their relationship. The idea of them divorcing seemed as unlikely as the world turning upside down. Mom, try not to tease Dad too much, okay? Looking forward to the meeting. Right, Dad's a bit of a crybaby. Leave the discussion to us, I said, hearing my father's nearly tearful voice through the phone. It painted a heartwarming picture in my mind. After some more small talk, I ended the call. On the day of the meeting, we decided to hold it at our house. A total of 8 people gathered: myself, the lawyer, Mirabel and her husband, my parents, and the in-laws. As we entered the house, everyone was taken aback by the mess. What is this? It's filthy. It looks like my brother's room from back in the day, my in-laws exclaimed, horrified. Sam had never been great at tidying up, but this was extreme. According to Mirabel, Sam had hidden his true nature initially and later dumped everything on me. Sam was slumped at the living room table, staring vacantly. When he saw us, he began to cry and tried to cling to me, but my father-in-law intervened. Sam then started shouting, "Come back, Sally. Without you, Watching Sam's pitiful display, I felt nothing. I realized I no longer had any feelings for him. I simply smiled down at him. What are you laughing at? All this mess is your fault. Where have you been slacking off? We're already divorced, so I have no intention of doing any housework here." Sam's eyes widened at my words. It dawned on me that I hadn't yet informed him about the divorce. I squatted down in front of him to deliver the news. "You told me to make sure everything was cleaned up, so I did. Cleaned up your room and our marital status," I said. "So that's why all my stuff is gone?" Sam asked, looking shocked. I smiled sweetly and nodded, which only made Sam's face turn crimson with rage. "Don't joke with me. Do you have any idea who's been supporting you all this time?" "That would be you," I replied calmly. "I'm grateful for it, but it seems you repay kindness with betrayal." Sam's anger reached a boiling point, his face flushed and his fists clenched. As he raised his hand to strike, it was not me who was struck but Sam himself. He staggered back, holding his cheek in shock. The one glaring at him with fiery intensity was none other than my mother-in-law. "I knew you were a bit insensitive," she said, her voice trembling with fury, "but I never imagined it was to this extent. What you've done is unforgivable." With tears pooling in her eyes, she turned to my parents and me, beginning to kneel in apology. "I'm terribly sorry for my son's outrageous behavior and for hurting Sally. Please forgive us." "You've done nothing wrong," I reassured her. She continued to apologize, her tears flowing freely. Seeing his mother's distress, Sam seemed to finally grasp the gravity of his actions. Just as Sam opened his mouth to speak, the doorbell rang with perfect timing. I went to greet the new guests with a smile. "Welcome. Thank you for coming. Sorry for the delay." "No, you're right on time." "Please excuse the mess," I said, leading the guests into the living room. Sam's eyes widened in surprise as he saw them. "Yvonne," he stammered as he recognized her. The woman introduced herself awkwardly. "I'm Yvonne, and this is my husband, Mr. Smith. I'm so sorry for the late introduction." Yvonne began to cry mid-sentence, looking just like she did in the photo with Sam. Facing her for the first time, I smiled encouragingly and urged her to continue. "Let's start with how you two met." "Oh, it was at a reunion," Yvonne explained. "He was an ex-boyfriend, and we rekindled our relationship after meeting again." "I'm so sorry," Yvonne said, tears still streaming down her face. "I didn't know he was married." Her words made me burst out laughing. Yvonne looked completely terrified by my reaction, her eyes wide with shock. I decided to explain why I had laughed. "Here, take a look at this," I said, handing over a copy of an account I had found. "This is your account, isn't it?" Yvonne looked confused. "Why do you have this?" "You made it public, wanting to be noticed, right?" I pointed to a specific line that read, "Wish my wife would see this," clearly disproving Yvonne's earlier claim. "You said you didn't know he was married." "That's a lie." Yvonne's husband glared at her, his frustration evident. But I'd be sued for compensation otherwise," Yvonne stammered. Turner then took control of the situation. "Let's proceed. We're demanding $1 million in damages. Are both of you in agreement?" Sam and Yvonne shook their heads vigorously. Sam, now speaking in a weak voice, protested, "How are we supposed to raise a child with such a debt? You have to be considerate of those with children." His assertion was met with a cold stare from Ivan's husband, who, along with Turner, was well aware of the details of the case. "How dare you make such an insincere statement?" "What do you mean?" Ivan asked, clearly flustered. My mother-in-law cut straight to the point. "That child in the photo isn't Sam's, is it?" Ivan's confusion grew. "Why would you say that?" "Sam can't have children," my mother-in-law explained with a chuckle. "He should have been informed about this." Ivan's face fell as she realized the truth. "What do you mean?" she asked weakly. "It means exactly what it sounds like," my mother-in-law said firmly. Ivan slumped, overwhelmed by the revelation. Sam appeared to have completely forgotten this crucial detail about himself, a significant oversight considering it involved his own health. I had heard before we got married that Sam had a condition that made it impossible for him to have children, which was one of the reasons I had hesitated about the matchmaking proposal. I received a call from my mother-in-law, who reminded me that although infertility treatment wasn't entirely hopeless, I had agreed to marry Sam with the understanding that we wouldn't have children. We had discussed this together, but Sam had clearly forgotten all about it amidst the excitement over the child from the affair. "Why didn't you tell me?" Sam asked. "I forgot," I replied. "How could you forget something so important?" he demanded. Ivan's husband interrupted with a calm demeanor. "As it turns out, the child isn't Sam's, nor is it mine. I was abroad on a long business trip, and by the time I returned, the child had already been born. It was a rather disturbing experience." Everyone in the room shuddered at the revelation. No matter how you looked at it, the timing of the child's birth didn't align with the last time Ivan's husband was in the country. Upon further investigation, the real father was identified, revealing an even more shocking truth. The child's father was someone else entirely. Furthermore, Ivan had an outstanding debt of around $100,000 to a nightclub, which had been investigated thoroughly. "That seems to fit you perfectly," Ivan's husband said calmly despite her hysterical outbursts. Sam looked on, stunned, unable to comprehend the extent of the deceit. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Mirabel, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Both my brother and that woman are the worst. How do you think my dear sister-in-law feels? I will never forgive you." Mirabel's words left Sam, who had always admired her, speechless. Ivan, on the other hand, was openly hostile. "It's none of your business." "Since I'm her sister-in-law, it is," Mirabel retorted. "Seeing my dear sister-in-law hurt fills me with rage." Ivan shot back, "Whatever, you'll get cheated on too." Mirabel momentarily lost her composure at Ivan's words. Ivan's husband, with a gentle but firm smile, added, "Do you understand my feelings? It took me 10 years to marry my wife. Don't compare my precious wife to someone who changes her heart and spreads her legs so easily." Despite his calm tone, his anger was palpable. Ivan was taken aback, unable to respond. Meanwhile, Turner laid out the documents on the table, consent forms for the compensation. Sam signed them with a vacant stare. "You're not going to divorce me, right?" he asked. "Of course I am," I said. "Don't worry. I'll also be pursuing a lawsuit to deny paternity," I said firmly. "But that child is yours." "What are you talking about?" Sam protested. "We've done a DNA test," I replied, my voice steady. Ivan, her face pale, signed the papers with a resigned expression. "Whether you two decide to reconcile or part ways, it's no longer my concern. The house will be listed for sale next week. Sam, please make sure to vacate by then." Ignoring Sam's frantic pleas, I left the home I had once called mine. Back at my new place, I spent a relaxing evening sipping fine wine with Mirabel and her husband. Later, I learned from Ivan's husband that Sam and Ivan had parted ways after we left. The two had gotten into a physical altercation, leading Ivan to divorce her husband. She returned to her parents' house but lost custody of the child and was forced to work in a predominantly female workplace where her affair had become public knowledge. She's been shunned by everyone, and while I feel a twinge of sympathy, I hope she manages to keep her job, despite the monthly alimony payments. Yvonne's husband, though initially downcast, soon remarried a woman who agreed to join him abroad. I wished them well before cutting off further communication. Sam, on the other hand, faced severe repercussions. Not only was he disowned by his family, but he was also dismissed from his job for cheating during work hours and claiming to work from home. Since the child's birth, he had spent almost every day at Yvonne's place, neglecting his work duties. With no prior work experience outside of his job, Sam couldn't hold on to any employment for long. Turner, my former lawyer, has been receiving desperate calls from him. Unfamiliar with real-world challenges, Sam had borrowed money from dubious sources, and his debt kept growing. He begged Turner to return the alimony and allow him to pay in installments, but Turner refused. Now, Sam is working tirelessly to repay his debt. My in-laws have moved in with Mirabelle and her husband, which was Mirabelle's husband's idea. They are very happy in their new home, a two-family residence close to mine. I'm invited for dinner about once a week, and Mirabelle and I often go out together, maintaining a strong bond. They initially felt guilty about everything, but I reassured them they were not to blame, which brought us even closer. My mother-in-law and I share a love for tea, and we often go out for lunch together. Mirabelle and my mother-in-law playfully compete for my attention, which has become a cherished routine. In a wonderful twist of fate, I recently remarried. My new partner is Turner, my former lawyer. After the case was resolved, Turner and I stayed in touch, and he eventually asked me out. With no reservations, I agreed, and we married a month ago on our 3rd anniversary. To add to our joy, I'm pregnant and expecting our child next year. Mirabelle is also expecting, and we're excited to share this journey as mom friends. Mirabelle is having a girl, and I'm having a boy. Maybe they'll get married someday. As we chatted about this on the way home from the gynecologist, our anxious husbands awaited us at home. Mirabelle and I laughed at the sight of them. Surrounded by my supportive husband and a trusted friend, I feel incredibly happy. With only 3 months left until childbirth, I eagerly anticipate meeting our child.